Hey, what's up, you guys? Happy Sunday. I hope everybody had like a really good Sunday, and I hope you're all ready for hopefully a really prosperous week. In lieu of the fact that it is October, let's go ahead and get into some creepy shit. Alright, so I was wondering, honestly, and I've been trying to do some research. I've been not trying, but actually doing research and finding things all over the place. Wondering if we'll get in that. We'll get into that later in this video. I want to talk about what I have called and deemed and named the argument zone. That's right. I'm calling it the argument zone. That is, in my particular case, and from what I've seen with the narcissist, right? That in your home, there's always one specific area that you tend to argue in. And if you didn't start off in that area, somehow you end in that area of your house, home, car, whatever. Or somehow, like, you gravitate at some point in this massive traumatic disagreement to end up in that area. And I call it the argument zone. I mean, there's no other really like name I could have found for it, really. But in my case, every time me and the recent ex-narc, the narcissistic ex-husband, every time we argued, we ended up arguing these full knockdown drag out fights in the walk-in closet, right? Now, mind you, remember, I was living 2 apartments down from where I am now in an efficiency, right? Something about that walk-in closet, we always ended up in the worst, horrific battles in that closet. And I wondered, it made me kind of look up, because the argument zone could be anywhere in your house, and maybe that's not you guys' case where you argued in the same area. But if you look back at it, did you all ever realize you like argued in the same spot, like the bathroom or something random like that, where like every argument ended up in that space? And I wondered, it made me ask spiritual questions like, do traumatic situations that reoccur in the same spot create demonic portals? I wondered that, you know what I'm saying? And if they do create demonic portals in that space that reoccurring arguments happen in, does that then leave behind residual energy that is negative, even post discard? I know that probably all sounded really like random and scientific, but if you listen to what I just said, it's basically saying, if you argue a bunch of times in one space, does the gross ass energy from there linger behind and like fuck up your space? Even if the person left, does the demon within them stay behind? Or we all know, first of all, demons don't travel alone. They travel in massive groups, in packs, like spiritual wolves. And no shade to wolves, I like wolves. I got a wolf ring. Where is it? He right there. So I no shade to wolves, but what I'm saying is they hunt in packs. They're not like angels, where angels can come solo dolo and wreck whatever the fuck, right? Because they're that badass. But what I mean is, like, I noticed, this argument zone. And I'm like, wow, every argument we had was in this fucking closet. So much so that when I moved 2 doors down from the old apartment, which is still over that way on the same floor I'm on now, right? When it was time for me to move, and I was actually like moving my things, when I would take the baby in her stroller over to the next apartment with my oldest son, and we would get to the door, she would be so great, but immediately as we got to that door, she would hysterically, when I say break down crying, like go from smiling and giggling to hysterically crying, and then getting almost like deaf mute when we got inside, or hysterically crying, excuse me, even more when we got inside. She didn't do that when we lived there, but when we left, it was almost such a relief. Like when I brought her into this new apartment, completely empty, it's almost like she knew that this was like the peaceful place. But every time I rolled over there to the other apartment, 2 doors down, to pick up the rest of our belongings, she broke down. And this is a baby. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, wow, so much so I had to get my mom to babysit so that I could get the rest of the things out. And then when I went in, I was uncomfortable, especially near the closet area. And when you think about it, why do scary movies like Poltergeist and other movies focus on the closet? Do you think that's just something everybody just made up? No. It's not a stereotype. And even stereotypes, they only exist because it's true. Stereotypes are actually true, which is why they exist. That means that thing has happened so many times in reality that you can talk about it and just say, yeah, that's what that thing does, right? But I started wondering about closets. And are closets portals? I know we're getting spiritually deep, but again, let's just rock out. It's October. Let's talk about the shit, right? So, tell me where you fought at, and if you fought in the same place repeatedly. When I was with my ex-narc, he used to do a lot of creepy things that all took place in the closet. Like, not just the fights, but quick story, because I have another story for you, as always, right? Quick story. One time where I had like told him he needed to leave, I went to go turn the lights out. This was like, he was supposed to have left like hours ago. I went to turn the lights out. I put my son to bed. I went to go lay down on the futon, because mind you, it's an efficiency, right? And I lay down in this futon, and I clicked the lights out, and I clicked like the little night light on that I have over the windows, and I hear like some faint sound. And so I get up because I have to check it out. And I turn the lights on in the walk-in closet, and I don't see anything. But then something said, look behind the door anyway. And my ex, who's like 6'2", again, I'm 5'1", don't forget the one, is just behind the door, like flat, like, and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? And he's like, oh, I was just gonna surprise you. Surprise me with what? Like, what were you gonna surprise me with? And he never said what the fuck it was. So I, again, was like, you need to get the fuck out of my house. He's like, all right, I'm gone. And you hear the door close, right? So I'm back to like, okay, let me go to bed. Then I'm like, you know what? No, let me double check, because now I'm freaked out. Lo and behold, I had all these storage bins, like medium-sized storage bins lined against the wall in the closet. And the clothes that I didn't have room to hang up, I put on top of these storage bins. I looked really well and started removing the clothes. He was laying on top of the storage bins, hiding again in my closet. I'm convinced that closets are portals in some way. And I am convinced, just me personally, that residual energy stays behind. You could not have the concept of a haunted location, whether it be a house, anything, even if it was a haunted item, if there was no such thing as residual energy alongside possession in some way. And I believe that the narc brings demons with them. And I don't believe all of them always leave with the narc. I believe some of them stay behind. Which is another reason why you should not create sexual soul ties with people. Because who's to say that they didn't implant not just sperm, but a STD, spiritually transmitted disease within you, right? Second story. Remember, if you follow my videos, remember I told you that I was with a narc, escaped a narc before I bumped into this last narc, right? Which is why it's so important to take time to heal before you just get into other relationships, because you really need to assess what's going on in all arenas, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, financially, and so forth, right? So that particular narc was the grandson of the Irish/Italian family that I had lived with, right? If you follow my videos, you know who I'm talking about. So, and he's the one that ended up doing like crack. All right. So, in the midst of him being on this crack binge, I go to his grandfather's house, which his grandfather was his biggest enabler. And we don't need to talk about that. Didn't your narcissist have family members that were their biggest enablers, right? The ones that saw the bullshit and was like, oh yeah, I mean, I don't think that's what that is. It's probably not that. And it's totally the fuck that. Like you got a knife sticking out of your forehead and you're like, John Doe stabbed me. And you're like, no, John Doe probably didn't do that on purpose. He slipped on a banana peel, like in the cartoons. Yeah, no, John Doe stabbed me, bitch. Stop enabling this fucker, right? And making excuses for them. So this is how this dude's granddad was. So while this dude's on this crack binge, his hideaway spot was his granddad's basement in his old room. His old room was down in the basement. That's where we used to chill when we were like 17. But in our mid-30s, I'm like, why the fuck are you going back to this basement? So I go back to retrieve him from this basement, as I often did back in the day where I thought you could actually save a drug addict. No, you can't. Only Jesus can do that. But anyway, so I go down into this basement. His granddad is somewhere upstairs in the house, but I'm like, okay, I'm going to go down into this basement. I realize he's not in the basement, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to take a Bible down here and I'm going to pray. I'm going to pray Psalms 91 and Psalms 23 because I want him to stop coming back to this place. I want him to get right. I'm going to pray over this space that it no longer feels like a comfortable space for him to come and be cracked out in, right? So I prayed this prayer and I could feel this energy over in this one corner. Now, the one corner was next to a what? Really old wooden closet. It's so old. That house is so old. It looks like Eric Foreman's basement from that 70s show. If you know what that 70s show is. It looked like Eric Foreman's basement, right? So the closet didn't have like a door. It had like this wooden plank thing that you had to slide to the side that was on these like rolly things to get into this makeshift wooden closet, right? So I'm like, wow. And I realized then that I felt like an energy. You know the feeling you get where someone's staring at you and you don't have to look at them to know they're staring at you. The reason why you look at them is because you felt it first. And then you just kind of, and you realize someone's like, and you're like, I felt that shit, right? You don't have to know someone walked up behind you by hearing them. You can feel the energy before you see them, right? It felt like that over in this corner by the closet. And it made me think back to when I asked him, because he had an ex-wife, right, that used to live there in that house with him, in that basement with him, right? And I'm like, man, your grandparents aren't the type that like let you fight and shit. Like, they're not that type, you know what I mean? They would have broke that shit up. I was like, where did these arguments take place with your grandparents living here? And he goes, oh, right there. And he pointed to that same corner that I felt that energy in, next to the closet. And the energy felt like, I know this is a long video, but I'm trying to explain some really serious shit to you. It felt like, if you've ever watched someone play a video game, or if you yourself play video games, I don't, but if you've ever seen a video game where your character is like not being used at the time, so they're just kind of standing there, and if they stand there long enough, they start to like move, like they're waiting for you to click on them so they can start moving and stuff. But while they're standing in place, they like do a thing. You know what I mean? Anyway, it felt like something doing that I knew for a solid fact spiritually was not human. And I knew that I could feel that it was way like taller than me. Now, even being 5'1", it's not hard to be taller than me, but this was taller than most humans, so I could feel, right? And I could tell that I was hated because I was praying with the Bible down in this basement. Then a foul stench like straight smacked me in the face, and I'm like, what is this shit? And I see a pile of clothes on the floor, and so I'm like smacking these clothes side to side, like, what is this fucking smell? I can't even really describe the smell to you, but it's not even, you could combine the sewer, You can combine someone taking a shit. You can combine piss on the sidewalk alongside rotting meat. And it still wouldn't compare to the smell that I smelled, right? It was different. And so I'm like frantically looking for the smell. And finally, I dropped to the ground and I'm like a dog, I'm like, what is this shit? I'm going to find it, right? And I'm like sniffing along like the carpet and I'm like, what the fuck is it? And I look across the room and I could see under his bed, that's where his bed was. And there was like this really fine china, because his grandma collected a lot of beautiful things. It was like a serving dish, but like old school with like handles, but it was like a fine like china or something, or porcelain. It was beautiful, right? Gold rims and stuff. And I'm like, what is his grandma's name was Marion? What is Marion's stuff doing under his bed, right? So I grab an old t-shirt and I crawl under the bed because this thing, this big serving dish, was strategically placed under his pillow, like his pillow on his bed. That would match and line up directly with where the serving dish was under the bed, right? So I'm like, why would he push this under his pillow? I pull it out with the dirty t-shirt and found it filled to the brim with urine, blood, and human excrement to the brim, right? And I turn around, no lie, and his Irish granddad is just standing there in the doorway, like this, looking at me. He goes, so what did you find? Creepily like that, right? And I was like, you should probably look at this. Like, there's shit and piss in this, in your dead wife's, like, nice bowl. Like, what is this? And he goes, oh, don't worry. I'll take care of it. You should go on home now. Right? And he just stands in this creepy ass doorway in a dark ass basement while I'm like showing him the shit and piss bowl. Needless to say, I got the fuck out of there, but that's my second creepy ass story that actually the fuck happened. And it was just weird that there was residual energy down in that basement from when he had apparently beat the shit out of his ex-wife in the corner next to what? A closet. So I just wanted to know, have you guys experienced any paranormal feelings after the narc left? Or not just that. Well, yeah, after the narc left or after you left them. If you were still residing in the same home or whatever that you guys had those fights in, did you experience anything strange? You know what I mean? I would say, especially in that zone, that area that I would call the argument zone. Anyway, sorry for the long video. I'm not really sorry. I mean, I just like talking to you guys, and I hope you have a really wonderful Sunday. And it is October, so I love you guys. And I hope you found this to be somewhat helpful and interesting, and I would love to hear your stories back. Those are just a few of mine. All right, bye.